Stand with both feet pointing straight ahead, hip width apart, about 4 to 5 inches apart from each other. Hold on to something such as a pole or a rope attached to a door jamb that is about waist to chest height. Make sure that your body is aligned from the ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders straight up and down. With both feet pointed straight ahead, you're going to raise yourself up onto the balls of your feet until you can raise your heels as high as they can go, then lower them back down to the floor. Repeat this movement for 10 repetitions, making sure that you're rolling off the balls of the feet and the big toes, as opposed to the outside edges of the feet. After you've done 10 repetitions, you're going to turn your feet so that they point out and continue with 10 more repetitions. Make sure you're still rolling off the inside edge of the foot, rolling off the ball of the feet as well as the big toes. Go as high as you can go in each repetition and make sure that your hips, shoulders, knees, and ankles stay in alignment. After the second set, you're going to turn your toes in so they're pointed towards each other with the heels pointed out. You're going to do another 10 repetitions from here, rolling off the ball of the feet and the big toes. Keep your stomach muscles relaxed the entire duration of the exercise. Stand with your feet 4 to 5 inches apart, parallel to each other, pointing straight ahead. Curl the tips of your fingers down so that the first knuckles are bent and the tips of the fingers are touching the top of the palms, with the palms still open and your thumbs pointed out. Bring your arms straight up to your sides and bring your shoulder blades back together. With your elbows completely locked straight, palms facing down and thumbs pointed forward, perform quick forward circles about 5 to 6 inches in diameter. As you're doing this, make sure that your stomach muscles remain relaxed the entire duration of this movement. Keep your shoulder blades pinched together and do not allow your elbows to bend. Once you've performed the recommended amount of repetitions, rotate so that your palms are face up and your thumbs are pointed back behind you. Then continue to do backwards circles, keeping the elbows as straight as possible and the shoulder blades back together. You might notice that your body swings back and forth slightly in sort of a pendulum motion, and that's okay. Balance and symmetry check. Pay attention to the differences in your shoulder blades as you pinch your shoulders back together and you perform the circles. Do you feel a difference in one shoulder versus the other, or one shoulder blade versus the other? Do you feel like when you bring your arms up, you feel the muscles of your neck working more than the muscles of your upper back or your shoulders? Do you feel it more on one side than the other? Pay attention to how this changes over time as you continue doing the movement and the program. This should begin to even out. For this position, we're going to teach you first one of the most crucial parts of the form of the actual position. Using the muscles in the front of your hips, you're going to tip your pelvis forward so that you can place an arch in your lower back. What you'll want to avoid is using the muscles in the middle of your back and allowing your ribs to flare out and your chest to expand in order to sit up straight. Sit in the center of a chair with your knees bent at a 90-degree angle, feet parallel and pointed straight ahead. Place a block or a pillow between the knees, making sure that the block or the pillow is about 4 to 6 inches in diameter. The pillow or the block should be firm enough to where you could press into it without it having the ability to squish in to where your knees are closer than 4 to 6 inches apart. Using the muscles in the front of your hips, tip your pelvis forward to create an arch in your lower back. Curl your fingertips so that the palms remain open and the tops of your fingers are touching the tops of your palms. Take your hands and bring your knuckles up to the sides of your head where your temples are, with your palms facing forward and thumbs pointed down. Bring them together to touch in front of your face and then open them back all the way to the side of your head. Some things to note: try not to let your shoulders rise up towards your ears. You want to make sure that you'll keep your stomach muscles as relaxed as possible. Also, keep your shoulders stacked directly over your hips and try not to lean forwards or backwards. Also, remember to make sure that you can keep the pressure on the block the entire duration of the position. Balance and symmetry check. In the seated position, when you tip your pelvis forward, you might notice that you feel the work either in one hip, both hips, or you might not feel it in the hips at all. Understand that as you continue doing this position, you should feel the work more in the hip flexors, which are the muscles in the front of your hips where the stomach meets the top of your legs. Some of you might feel the work in your lower back at first, which should change over time to where you feel it in the hip flexors. Also, pay attention to how it feels in the upper body, mainly the shoulder blades and the muscles of the upper back and your neck. You might notice that you feel some muscles on one side working more than the muscles on the other side. Take notes of any of the asymmetry from right side to left side of your upper body while you're going through this position. It should begin to even out as you continue doing this movement. Using the muscles in the front of your hips, tip your pelvis forward and create an arch in your lower back. Interlace your fingers together with your palms facing outward away from you. Lock your elbows straight out in front of you, then bring your arms overhead, keeping your elbows completely straight and the fingers interlaced. Make sure that you keep your shoulders stacked directly over your hips and that you don't lean backwards as you're bringing your arms over your head. The goal is to get your arms as far overhead as you can as you look up at your hands the entire duration of the position. Remember to keep your stomach muscles completely relaxed and hold the arch in the pelvis the entire duration of the position. Balance and symmetry check. Recognize that as you're moving your arms overhead, you might feel like your back wants to excessively arch or lean back in order for your arms to get overhead. This is a compensation that's happening at the middle of the back for your inability to use your shoulders the right way. Over time, this should change and it should become easier to get your arms overhead. You might also notice that your shoulders want to elevate through this movement. Though you should keep them down and prevent them from elevating, pay attention to the difference from right shoulder to left shoulder and how they move. Pay attention to any differences from left arm to right arm when it comes to your ability to keep the elbow as straight as possible. They should obviously become more symmetrical as time goes on. And the last thing to note is how far do your arms actually get over your head? Can you get them straight above your shoulders? Or can you only have them high enough to where they're just in front of your body? As you develop a better relationship between the pelvis and the shoulders, and your shoulders begin to move the way that they're supposed to, you should be able to bring your arms further back so they're straight over your body. Lie on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor, pointed straight ahead, parallel to each other. Put a block or a pillow between your knees. Make sure that the block or the pillow is between 4 to 6 inches in diameter, and that the block or the pillow is firm enough so that when you press in against it, it doesn't have the ability to actually squish in. Bring your arms out to your sides at a 45-degree angle from your body with your palms face up. Using about half of your strength, squeeze your knees inward into the block and then release, on and off. You should feel the work in the muscles on the insides of your legs as well as the hip flexors. Balance and symmetry check. Do you feel muscles working in one side of the body that are not working the same in the other side of the body? Do you feel like one leg is pushing into the block or the pillow firmer than the other leg? Or do you feel like the timing of how they press into the block is off? Either way, Take notes and recognize that this should change and become more symmetrical from left to right as time goes on. Very lightly contract the muscles of your glutes, your butt muscles, on and off. Notice how you can't see anything else in the body, including the pelvis, moving as the contractions are happening. That's because you only want those muscles to be doing the work. Your pelvis should not move. If you notice that your back is flattening to the floor every time you squeeze, you're probably squeezing too hard and you need to lighten it up. Keep your stomach muscles completely relaxed throughout the duration of this position. Make sure you get a full squeeze, hold for a second, and then completely relax between each squeeze. Balance and symmetry check. Take notes of how the differences between the left and the right legs are as you're doing the squeezing. Does one glute work when the other one does not? Or is the timing off? Does one glute squeeze sooner than the other glute? This should even out over time. Place your back against a wall and keep your feet and knees about 6 inches apart. From here, you're going to walk away from the wall until you can allow yourself to slide down and put yourself in a seated position where you are about just over a 90-degree angle at the hips as well as the knees. The goal here is to have your mid back, lower back, and hips completely flush against the wall. It's almost as though you're going to have a small slouch in your back and your posture in order to make this happen. Your head and shoulders will slightly come off the wall. Keep all of the pressure in your heels, relax your stomach, put your palms face up on your lap, and make sure that you do not use your upper body or shoulders at any point in this position. Keeping the pressure in your heels, you're going to hold this for the recommended amount of time. If you feel like a lot of the work is going into your knees, you can come up slightly until you don't feel the work in your knees anymore. You should feel the work in the upper thigh muscles, the quadriceps. Balance and symmetry check. Do you feel like both legs are working evenly, or do you feel like one leg is pushing into the ground or the wall more than the other? Take note in how even it feels where your back and hips are up against the wall. You might feel like it's not symmetrical from left to right, like certain parts of your back or your hips are touching the wall more than other parts. One thing that you can do if this is happening is to place a yoga block or some type of firm pillow between your knees where you're not necessarily going to squeeze it, but allow your knees to press into it, just enough to hold it, and see if that makes things even out. Over time, it should even out as things become more symmetrical. Stand with your heels, butt, and upper back against an open wall, with your feet pointed straight ahead, about 4 to 5 inches apart from each other. Bring your arms out to your sides at shoulder level with your palms facing away from the wall, arms and the back of the hands touching the wall. With your stomach muscles completely relaxed, bend at the waist so your upper body slides against the wall towards one side. Keep both sides of the hips touching the wall as well as your shoulders and arms. Try not to let your arms move. Rather, make sure it's the trunk that's moving and you're bending at your side, keeping your hips in the exact same place. Bend from side to side, sliding against the wall. Once you've done the recommended amount of repetitions on both sides, you're going to widen your stance so that your feet are approximately 1.5 feet apart. You're going to repeat the exact same movement, making sure that the feet are pointed straight, that the hips do not slide from side to side, and the weight is even on both feet, and you're bending from the trunk. After you've done this second position, you're going to widen further from 2 to 2.5 feet apart. Continue the movement again for the recommended amount of repetitions. Once you've done this, you're going to go back to the original stance at hip width apart and finish with the same amount of recommended repetitions. Remember, as you're bending from side to side, that your stomach muscles are going to want to tense up as you're going through the bend. Try to keep these as relaxed as possible. Balance and symmetry check. Pay special attention to any differences that you feel from the right side of your body to the left. Do you bend further on one side than the other? You might notice that you feel different parts of your body as you're going through the bend. Take notes of whatever things become apparent to you. As always, these are asymmetries showing up in the body and should even out over time. Stand with your feet pointed straight ahead, hip width apart, and parallel to each other. Raise your arms straight ahead of you to shoulder level. Your palms should be face down, and your elbows should be straight out from the shoulder. Kick your hips back so that there is an arch in your lower back and your butt sticks out behind you. Bend at the knees and lower yourself down while trying to keep your upper body as straight as possible. Try not to let your arms lower down and keep them at the shoulder level. Pay attention to the weight distribution on your feet. Make sure that the weight is even and that you are holding the weight distribution between the heel and the ball of the feet, as opposed to feeling the weight distribution all the way on the heels or all the way on the front of the toes or the feet. You should feel the work in the muscles in the front of your hips as well as the quads. You'll also feel the work in the muscles of the shoulders. Balance and symmetry check. How far are you able to go down while maintaining a comfortable position with your back? Do you only get to a certain point where you feel like your upper body starts to get forced down towards the ground and you can no longer keep it up straight? This is a compensation happening for the lack of function in the hips. Over time, as you start to develop more function, this should become better. Pay attention to if you can or cannot keep the weight distribution even on both feet, or if you feel like your body shifts over to one side more than the other. You might also feel muscles working in one leg that you don't feel working as much in the other leg. Again, this is asymmetry happening, and it should start to even out over time. If you feel the work all in your lower back, bring yourself up a little bit so you're not as low. Eventually, the work should change from the muscles in your back to the muscles in the hips.